Hey guys, Mr. Kalala here. We're going to take a quick look at angle relationships. There's four of them that we're going to focus on. They are vertical, adjacent, complementary, and supplementary angles. Before we start talking about them though, we need to quickly recap how to name angles. This is something I would imagine you've seen before, but sometimes people forget. So I just want to check in and make sure everybody understands. You're very often going to see them labeled with 3 points. Now remember that a angle is made up of just connecting 3 points. So like let's say I'm going to connect C to I to G. When I connect them, I make this angle. Okay? So the angle that is within this section here. And I would call that angle C I G. I just label it with the 3 letters that I connect to make it. Now I want to be clear. I can go from C to I to G, or I can go from G to I to C. Those are both the same angle. Okay? So if I were to do this in a different color here, and let's connect H to I to B, that would be this angle over here. Okay? And when I go to label that, I would label that angle H I B, or angle BIH, either one. Now, I did not say this, but I would figure it goes without saying. These little kind of Pac-Man symbols stand for angle. Okay, so it's just an angle symbol followed by the 3 letters that make up that angle. You should have seen that in previous years. If not, that's a quick reminder. Okay, let's get on to our first kind of angle relationship. We're going to talk about vertical angles. Now, vertical angles are angles that are always opposite each other when lines intersect, and they always are equal in measure. When we say equal in measure, we mean that they have the same number of degrees. So intersecting lines means lines that cross. You can see we have a set of those here. And opposite is literally exactly what it says. So if I have, say, this angle here, it is opposite of this angle here. So therefore, those two that I just labeled with red, those 2 angles are vertical angles. If they're vertical, that means they have the same number of degrees. Let's just say that this is, I don't know, let's call it 70 degrees. That would mean that this angle over here, if let's say I label it X, if I didn't know what it was, you could say that X equals 70 degrees. It has to, because they are vertical. They are across from each other with intersecting lines. Therefore, they are vertical. Therefore, they are equal. I have another set of vertical angles here. This one has to be equal to this one as well. So whenever we have intersecting lines, we have vertical angles, and vertical angles are always equal. Now, typically, what we like to do is kind of fold in some algebra with it. So sometimes you might see something like this. And so you have a pair of vertical angles. So you have this angle here is vertical with this angle here. And we have one angle is, nice and simple, 70 degrees. The other angle says 5x minus 10 degrees. So we might ask you to solve for x. Well, the nice part is since we just determined that vertical angles are equal, I can simply take these 2 things, 5x minus 10 and 70, and since they're vertical, I know that they're equal. Set them equal to each other. I just created an equation. Now I'm just going to go ahead and solve that equation. So you guys know how to solve equations. I'll add 10 to both sides. That's going to leave me 5x equals 80. Divide by 5. 80 divided by 5 is 16. So the value of x is 16. Now I want to be very, very clear here. That does not mean that this angle is 16 degrees. This angle, we already know, is 70 degrees because it has to be equal to this one on the right. What we're saying is 16 is simply x. So the x is equal to 16. If I were to plug a 16 into 5x minus 10, it would end up equaling 70. So we can always say that vertical angles are equal. We can use that to solve some missing amounts. Let's take this a step further with our next one. We're going to talk about adjacent angles. Keep this really short and sweet. Adjacent means next to. The technical definition is 2 angles that share a ray. So if we were to look at that, I could just, say I've got this angle is adjacent to this angle. Okay. Now, if you forget what a ray is, you've definitely talked about that in the past. There's different kinds of things when we talk about geometry. A ray has a dot on one side and an arrow on the other. That's different from a line, which has arrows on both sides. You may also remember there's something called a segment, which has dots on both sides. So when we talk about a ray, we are referring to having a dot on one side and an arrow on the other. So these two angles that we just said are adjacent, they share this ray right here because it's going from this dot where they intersect up to this arrow. Both of those angles share that ray. That's really it when it comes to adjacent angles. We're really just giving a name to two angles that are next to each other. All right, let's take this to the next one, and we're going to talk about complementary angles. Now, complementary angles, you can see here in the definition, are angles that together have a sum of 90 degrees. So we have, I gave you two different sets of complementary angles here. Here on the left, you can see we have ones that we have 60 degrees and 30 degrees, and obviously 60 and 30 make 90. And we have here a right angle symbol. Very often you will see complementary angles given as kind of two pieces that make a right angle, and that's because right angles are 90 degrees. But they don't always have to be. In fact, complementary angles don't even need to be next to each other. They don't need to be adjacent if we want to start using the vocabulary. So over here on the right, you can see we have 27 degrees and 63 degrees. Those are also considered complementary because they equal 90. It does not matter that they're not next to each other. I will tell you, however, more often than not, you'll see it as this form on the left and kind of the 90-degree right angle. That's how you'll see it quite often. But again, complementary angles, two angles that together have a sum of 90 degrees. Let's put this with a little bit of that algebra spin on it like we did a minute ago. And we have here a set of complementary angles. One of them is 15 degrees right here. Okay, the other one is 3x plus 12 degrees. We are going to do just like we did with vertical angles. We're going to make an equation and then solve that equation to get the value of x. But we need to be a little bit careful here. Common mistake that people tend to make is they do it just like we did with vertical. With vertical angles, we made the two of them just equal to each other. Well, complementary angles are not equal to each other. Together they equal 90. So what we're going to do is we're going to take the two angles, say basically one angle plus the other angle, and say, hey, they equal 90 degrees together. And so I'll just fill in what those angles are. So one of the angles is 15 degrees. The other angle is 3x plus 12. So together they equal 90 degrees. I go ahead and I solve that. So first I'll combine like terms. So it turns into 3x plus 27 equals 90. Go ahead and solve that. So subtract 27 from both sides. I am left with 3x equals 63. Divide by 3. 63 divided by 3 is 21. So again, messed up my circle there. There you go, 21. So again, that means that this x here is 21. It does not mean that this whole angle is 21. Since you know they equal 90, you should know that this angle has to be 75 degrees, because 75 and 15 make 90. If I were to plug 21 into 3x plus 12, it would give me 75. So don't confuse the value of the x with the value of the angle. They are two different things. Okay? So that's complementary angles, two angles that together equal 90 degrees. We'll go to the last one we need to talk about, supplementary. Very, very similar to complementary, except supplementary angles are angles that together have a sum of 180 degrees. These are very easy to confuse. Very often people confuse complementary and supplementary, but complementary equal 90, supplementary equal 180. That is really the only difference here. So if you take a look, very similar to what we saw in the past, I have two examples here for you. Here's one of them, 120 degrees and 60 degrees. Well, 120 plus 60 equals 180. Therefore, they are supplementary. I would like you to notice here, when I look at this, we have a straight line. Okay. Supplementary angles, when put together, will always make a straight line. So when you're looking for supplementary, notice any straight lines and you should typically find them. Okay, any straight line is always 180 degrees. So if I were to draw a straight line and make two angles, putting this angle and this angle together has to equal 180, even though I don't know what their measurements are. I know together they're 180 because they make a straight line together. Okay. Just like we said with complementary, supplementary angles also do not have to be next to each other. Here's two of them that are not directly next to each other. They're not adjacent, and they also equal 180. So again, as long as they equal 180, they are considered supplementary. All right, take a quick look again with a little algebra spin on it. Again, I want to point out this is a straight line right here. Okay. Anytime we have a straight line, that's 180 degrees. So I know that this here, 2x plus 8, and this here, 60 degrees, has to equal 180. So again, we can just basically say, hey, let's take those two angles. Angle plus angle is going to equal 180. Okay? One of those angles was 60 degrees, so we're going to go ahead and pop in 60. And the other angle was 2x plus 8, so let's pop that in there as well. 2x plus 8. And then we're going to go ahead and solve it. So we'll combine like terms. So 2x plus 68 equals 180. Subtract 68. That's going to give me 2x equals 112. Divide by 2, and x equals 56. All right, now again, don't confuse the value of x with the value of the angle. The angle itself has to be 120 degrees because 120 and 60 make 180. What we are saying with 56 is we are saying that this x right here is equal to 56. If I plug that in, 2 times 56 plus 8, that will give me the 120 that the angle is. Okay? So again, supplementary angles have a sum of 180 degrees. So really quickly, just to finish it off, you have 4 different angles here: vertical, adjacent, complementary, and supplementary. You need to know the definitions of each. They are somewhat similar, so please make sure you know the definitions well so you don't confuse them with each other. And you're going to try some problems with that this week. Good luck.